Hello YouTube, and welcome to another video. In today's video I'm going to be breaking down the mastering process for a song that I just finished working on. It's titled Nemo Nemo. It's in Igbo language and it means my mother, my mother. This song is in celebration of mothers, which brings me to how is it that women get to have about 100 days plus where we celebrate them for one reason or another, and us men get what, 1 or maybe 2 days in a whole year where we are celebrated. I mean, no hating, you know, we cannot really appreciate the women enough for all that they do for us. You know, all the women in our lives who are pulling the strings in one way or another, making sure that, you know, we are the best version of ourselves. Shout out to all the women. But you know, it's what it is. I mean, just recently we had the International Women's Day, and then in some days to come, you know, we're going to be having Mother's Day as well. So yeah, women, we love and we respect you. At the time of filming this video, the song is not out yet and it's not due to be released yet. So yeah, that's that. So Nemo Nemo is a choral piece and it's done by a choral group named The Melody Beats, and yeah, that's really it. So let's listen to what we have on. We'll listen to the final product first, and then, you know, I'll strip off everything, and then we'll, you know, try to build it all up from scratch. So let's hear what we have. Alright, so that's a little sneak peek into what the song sounds like. Now let's take everything off. We'll start from the stereo out, where I have the clipper and limiter. So I'll just turn that off for now, and then later we'll see what they're doing. Also, I'll turn off this. You can see I have so here's the audio file itself, and this is the main channel where I've done most of the processing, and then I'm routing it to, or I'm sending a copy to this effect where I have some other processing going on, and I've named it P-comp, which is parallel compression, and we'll be looking at what I have there in a minute. So for now, without the parallel comp, let me just, you know, mute that, turn these off, and turn off all of this processing. Let's hear what the mix sounds like by itself before I started to do all of this processing in the mastering session. Side note, I produced and mixed the song as well. So here, let's hear what I had as at when the mix was done before I brought it in for mastering. Nemo Nemo, ezigbo Nemo, Nemo Nemo, Nemarama ewo, Nemo Nemo, ezigbo Nemo, Chukwu biko nna m gozie Nemo nye ya ọganiru. Nemo Nemo, ezigbo Nemo, Nemo Nemo, Nemarama ewo, Nemo Nemo, ezigbo Nemo, Chukwu biko nna m gozie Nemo nye ya ọganiru. Chukwu biko gozie oche dike mama. All right, so you get the idea. You hear how it sounds like. Very decent mix, very nice sounding mix. So bringing it into the mastering session, the first thing that I did was to run it through a tape emulation plugin. This one's from IK Multimedia. So I just want to let you know in advance, maybe while doing the editing, I'm going to be zooming in a little closer for you to see all of the details as per values to what I've done, because the GUI scaling, I've scaled everything down so that I can have enough screen real estate, and also so that I can repurpose this video for short form content, which means that from where I'm sitting, I might not necessarily see all the numbers exactly as I've tweaked things around, but I will be able to zoom it in, you know, during the editing for you to see clearer. But then the most important thing is to hear the effect that we're adding and to hear how it sounds within the whole thing. So the first thing, like I said, is I've run it through this tape, and I'm using the Tape Machine 80 from IK Multimedia. I've ramped up the input a little bit and I've adjusted the output just so that I can level match things, and I have it on the tape speed on 15 IPS. I want to slow down the tape speed a little bit so that I can get that little low end bump, you know, just make it a little bit warmer on the low. And then I've chosen this as my tape formula. Basically almost everything else I've left it on the default setting, the true stereo, and then the transport modeling, I've left everything so that the song can pass through all of the circuits, all of the components of this tape machine. And I think I've messed with this bias a little bit. I've raised it up a little bit. Also this high frequency EQ right here, and then this high frequency EQ on the record section, and then this one on the play section. So let's hear what the tape is adding to this piece. Let me take it to where the music comes in. You know, how about I just loop this section so that I don't all right, so now let's take out the tape now, and then we'll bring it back into here what it's doing. Right, so if you're listening to this on your phone speakers or on your laptop with your laptop speakers, you might not hear the subtle differences, except maybe you are listening on, you know, a really good pair of studio headphones or studio monitors. That's when you get to really hear the subtle differences that this tape adds to the sound. So what I've just done is I've warmed it up a little bit, and I've added a little bit of saturation, because of I drove the sound a little bit harder into this tape machine, so it has introduced some subtle saturation. And then this tape speed that I've selected makes it so that we have a little bit warmer sound, and same as well with this bias right here. So that's what the tape is doing. And then the next I have frequency from Steinberg. This is stock EQ. So what I've done simply is I've set this first band to mid-side mode, and on the mid I've rolled off everything below 30 Hertz on the mid channel, and on the side channel I have it a little bit higher to 80 Hertz. What this does is make sure that everything below 80 Hertz is mono. Right, I've taken off every information on the sides around 80 Hertz and lower, and then on the mids I've just rolled off everything that's below 30 Hertz, because really we don't need that and we can't really also hear that. And then on this second band right here, I've just done a little cut of about 1 dB from 75 Hertz. That point is like the crossover point between where we have the bass sound, not the bass guitar now, but the actual bass drum sound, and as well the bass guitar. So that point right there I observed is like the crossover point, so I didn't want it to really muddy up the mix a little bit, so I dipped that part a little so that we can have a little bit of separation between the bass drum and then the fundamental of the bass guitar. And then yeah, I've gone ahead to about 300 Hertz where there is a little bit of mud, and I've taken out just a little bit, 1.5 dB, and as well from this here around 500, I've taken out about 1.5 dB as well, just to control that low mid build up from the saturation that we've just had. And I want to control that so that it's not clouding up and muddying up the entire mix. And that's about that for frequency. So the next thing I have is the Shadow Hues compressor. This is a mastering compressor from Plugin Alliance, and I've turned off the optical section, so I'm just using the VCA section, and I've moved the metering from optical to discrete so that I can see what I'm doing on the VU meters. I have the attack set to the slowest and the release set to the fastest, ratio 2:1, and I'm doing just about a dB of compression, or maybe even under a dB of compression, you know, just to glue the sound, really glue it together. And you know, that's about that. Let's see what the compressor is doing. You can see we're just about under a dB of gain reduction, and this is just so that it can tie the entire mix together. And I've also gone ahead to do serial compression on this. So after the Shadow Hues, I've also introduced the Dynamu, which is a very new style compression, and I'm going for this style of compression because of the tone and the character that it offers, you know. And same thing, I have the attack set to the slowest and the release set to the fastest. I've pulled the threshold back to the point where I'm just getting about 0.5, still not up to a dB of gain reduction. All this is just to tie the whole mix together and then introduce some kind of, you know, character to the mix. You can see the needle is barely moving away from zero. You know, we are getting a little bit of compression, but it's not so much that you hear it. It's just controlling the sound, you know, from where the Shadow Hues left off. It's picking up from there and still, you know, tucking it in a little bit, you know, molding the sound and also giving it the character that it offers. Right after that, I have the EQP1A from IK Multimedia, and I'm using it to just boost the low end and the high end, you know, a little bit, give it a little bit bump on the low, and then same as well on the highs. And what I've done on the highs is I've set it to 12K, and because the Pultec style EQ is a broad stroke EQ, so what I've done is set it to 12K, and because this high end boost is a shelf and not a bell, it goes all the way from maybe 1 to 2 or even 3K, and then ramps up slowly up to 12K. So now because of that, everything in the mid-range is going to be boosted as well, but we're going to get the most boost around where we've set points here. So that means that whatever harshness that was there would have also been raised a little bit. So what I like to do is when I boost at 12K, I also duck at 5K to just control that mid-range a little bit, so it's not really poking out its nasty harsh head. So I've boosted it up to here, up to this point, and I've just attenuated it a little bit, not so much, so that we don't alter the sound so much. And then for the low frequency, the same principle applies. Because it's a shelf, it doesn't just boost at 30, or it doesn't just boost at 60 or wherever the number says. It goes all the way. It's really a broad stroke. So a lot of people like to have it on 60, but what I've observed is that when you put it at 60, it goes all the way up to even maybe 500, right? So I like to back that off a little bit, put it at 30. Sometimes I have it at 20, it just depends on what I'm hearing at that point in time. And then I've boosted it a little bit, just a little above 1 or around 1, and I've also attenuated a little bit around the same point to give us that tight round low end. So yeah, that's what I have. And then the next, I have the SPL PQ from Plugin Alliance. And so what I'm doing with this, first of all, I've linked the channels, so whatever I'm doing on one side, which is the left channel, will also apply to what I have on the right channel. So for the low frequency, you can see that LF, so it's divided into LF, LMF, that's low mid frequency, high mid frequency, and also the high frequency. So for the low frequency, I have nothing going on. You can see everything is straight down the middle. For the low mid, I have it around here, this value, you can see that's about 300 or so, and I'm taking out just 1 dB out of that muddy frequency. And then the next I have on the on the mid frequency around this right here, I'm taking out just 0.5 dB from that. And then the next on the high mid frequency, you can see around here, I'm taking away half a dB from that as well. And also on the highs, I'm doing nothing. And on the last one, what I have is imager from Ozone. So I've set all the crossover points from the lowest 80, 800 and 8K. So that's the way I've set this up. And on the highest frequency, everything from 8K and above, I've spread it out a little wide. So I have it at 40, and then everything from 800 to 8K, I don't have it quite as wide. I have that at 20, and then everything on the low mids from 80 to about 800, I have just about 10, just a little, just so that the whole sound is spread out a little bit, and we have that wide. And then everything under 80 is a little bit mono. And while doing all this, I'm watching this phase correlation meter to make sure that I am not in the negative. All throughout the song I am in the positive. It's just dancing around here, and that shows that our entire signal is in phase. So let me take out all of the processing again, and then I'll just bring them back in so that we can hear the difference that it makes. So you can hear it sounds a little bit more fuller, and I believe the most significant thing that you're going to observe is that it became a little bit more brighter, and that's because of the Pultec EQ boosts that I have. So I just wanted the sound to brighten up a little bit, not so much from where I have it in the mix. So yeah, that's all that I have on the actual channel itself. And then the next, I've set up a parallel compression effect, which I'm sending a copy of this signal to. And the essence of this is just to fatten up the sound a little bit more, make it heavier, make it a little bit more dense, and also to help add some volume so that we can push up the LUFS reading a little bit without sacrificing a lot of downward compression or limiting. So what I have on the parallel comp is, okay, let me take this back down so that we can hear just what the parallel comp channel is doing. So after all of the processing, I turned down the level, I just mixed it in a little bit, not so much. But let me take this back to Unity so that we can hear all of the effects, and then I'll take it back down to the level where it's at right now. Alright, so the first thing is I have a tape. This time around I'm using the Tape Machine 440, also from IK Multimedia. I have the tape speed at 15 inches per second, and I've also selected this tape formula. I've pushed the input a little bit, and I've also backed the output just so that I can drive more of the signal into the machine to get a little bit more saturation and get that color from the unit. And then the next is, which is where I'm doing the actual compression, is here. I'm using this Black 76 from IK Multimedia. I have it at the slowest attack and the fastest release, so that I can have and retain all the transients and then allow the compressor to really recover as soon as possible. What this does is to enhance the groove, make sure that we retain the transients, but then after the compression, it releases so that the song just bounces to life and grooves. And I've also engaged this all buttons in mode so that we can have some really aggressive compression. And the inputs, I have it here almost down the middle, which means that this needle right here is going to be almost pegged at this point. So we are getting absolute compression, clamping it down, and let's hear what that sounds like. Let me just turn this down a little bit. Let's do -5. So you can see how I'm almost destroying the signal, and that's really the idea. So I want that crackly sound of it, and also that, you know, clamped sound, that really compressed sound. So that I'm just going to feed a little bit of it into the main sound to create that dense, full feeling in the mix. And that's what we have. And then the next, I've brought in frequency, and I've used frequency to just isolate, you know, where I want this whole parallel compression to be happening. So on the first band, I have it set at a 100 Hz, where I've done a cut at 12 dB per octave, and also from 6K and above, I've also done a cut at 12 dB per octave. So I'm just really isolating this, and then excluding the really low end and then the really high end. So I'm just doing like from the low mids all the way up to the high mids. I'm injecting that sound into the mix, so you can hear what the difference sounds like now. And if I take it off, so I have the entire mid-range. That is what I'm working on, the entire mid-range, and I'm feeding that into the main mix so that that mid-range can come alive on whatever speakers you are listening on, whether your mobile device, your laptop, or some Bluetooth speaker, you know, whatever. You'll be able to hear all of the details in the mix. And then the next I have is decapitator, pushing a little bit of saturation into this parallel compression that I have. And I have the drive set at 1. I observed that a little went a long way, because if I overdid it, it would really kill the sound and then go against the move that I'm trying to make. So I have the drive set at 1. I've chosen this A setting right here, and I've just dialed this tone back a little bit to make it a little bit darker. And yeah, that's it. The mix is at full wet, so we're getting the whole saturation sound from this. So you can hear how the sound feels almost like it's crushed and it's destroyed, right? But then that's the whole idea of it, is that we can take this sound now and feed it into the main mix and just, you know, blend it in to a point where it's injecting life, and we're not really hearing all this garbage or rubbishness from the parallel compression. So now I'll just take that back down to where we had it before, which was at -20. I'll bring back the main signal, and then what I'll do is take it down and then, you know, just bring it in so we can hear what it's adding. So you can see with effects like this, a little goes a long way, and that's just what I've done. You can hear just how much fuller it became, you know, once I introduced the parallel compression. Before or without the parallel compression, it sounds, you know, thin. It sounds like there is an emptiness to it. It still sounds good, you know, if you're hearing it by itself. But then the moment you introduce the parallel compression, you can hear that weight, you can hear that fullness, you can hear all of, you know, all of the details coming out. So let's hear another section of this. So that's about that. And the next I have is on the stereo out. So the first thing I've done is to clip the sound, all the extra excess peaks, that we don't really want, that are not desired. I'm just shaving it off just a little bit. So you can see once the drums come in, especially that bass drum, it just clips off the transient just a little bit, just a very tiny bit, so we can get a little bit more headroom to push the sound further into the limiter. And that's what the clipper is doing. So the next I have is my first limiter, and I like to use 2 limiters. So the first one is Pro L2, and I've pushed up the input up to about 5 to get about a dB or 2 dB of gain reduction. I really don't like to limit my sound so much so that I don't kill all of the dynamics. So I have the style set to transparent, and then set the attack to about 10 milliseconds, have the release on the fastest. Yeah, that's it. I've turned on true peak limiting, and I've set the output to 0.1 just so that we don't have the sound going over 0 dB, right? So I just a little under 0 dB, just 0.1, just to have that video very, very safety spot right there. Yeah, these plugins tend to get really heavy on CPU, and it's quite understandable because really having 2 tape machines, especially from IK Multimedia, one on the P comp and one on the actual signal, it's really demanding. 2 tape machines, and those tape machines, I think from what I've heard, the oversampling is about maybe 2 or 4x oversampling. It might be even more, so that requires a lot from the CPU of your computer. And then for the BX clipper, it's on 4x oversampling. So all of this oversampling really demands a lot from your CPU. And Pro L2 as well, I have the oversampling set to 2x. All of this just so that I can avoid the intersample peaks as much as possible, have the processing be very clean and not really impart any negative artifacts on the signal. And that's really what it's all about. So that explains why the sound is breaking at this point. All of the plugins are now fighting for CPU, so pardon me. Okay, so what I really want you to take away from this is that I'm not doing a whole lot of gain reduction on the limiter, just about 2 dB or maybe even under 2 dB, so that we don't really squash the sound. And you can see we are at an integrated level of -10. I'm sure if we play the song all the way from beginning to the end, the integrated level will come up a little bit to about exactly at -10 or -9.9 or thereabouts. And then the next I have a brick wall limiter just to seal everything and make sure that nothing crosses the 0 mark and we're not clipping the master. So I've dialed this back to -1.1, which is the output ceiling. The attack, I've left the attack and release at the default. I found out that it works for me every time. The style to clean, and then I've pushed up the input just a little bit to get about 1 maybe 2 dB of gain reduction, and I doubt that it's getting up to 2 dB. Let's take the song to somewhere where it's a little bit more intense. So you can see just under a dB of gain reduction from the last limiter, and that's it. That's where we are, that's where we're sitting, and that's the entire mastering breakdown. So yeah, if you enjoyed this, please leave me a like, drop a comment, and also subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that. And until the next video, thank you and see you then.